And I think that should be going on. Yes, good. Okay. I just need to copy it, place it into Discord. Oh, okay, perfect. All right. So I got my, I was banned from doing live streams for about 3 months. So I have 3 months of doing Hangouts to catch up with. So I figured I'd do a Hangout. And I thought what a nice topic to discuss would be Mabon, the autumn equinox, as we call it, or the autumn equinox in the northern hemisphere, and they have the spring equinox in the southern hemisphere around this time of the year, around September the 21st. It usually has a range of sometimes goes all the way to September 20th, all the way up to the 22nd. So it just kind of, it really depends upon when the sun is directly over the equator, and we have equal. I don't know if it's the equator. That might be wrong. And we have equal daylight and equal night, and that is the equinox. So I thought we would discuss that, and what I was figuring I could do is talk about it for a little while, answer some questions in the chat, and then figure out some way to invite people on. If I don't have you, if I'm not following you on Twitter, or you're following me on Twitter, or you're not in my Discord, I don't know how I can get you in here. I might be able to email it to you. But I'm not going to be posting it in the chat, as the last time I did that, it's, there were disastrous effects that came about from that. So I'm not going to be doing that anymore. I learned my lesson. So let's see, who do we got in the chat? Let's see. We've got Victoria. Hey, Victoria, how you doing? And Star Dancer, and Jeremy, and Leon. And yeah, Leon, you can join. I'm going to just talk for a little bit, maybe about 10, 15 minutes, and then I'll open it up and invite people in, and we can discuss it. But just kind of give you a little background. As far as the Wicca tradition goes, they originally had just 4 fire festivals. That was Samhain, Imbolc, Beltane, and Lughnasadh, which was the 4 fire festivals. And these were pretty much adopted from the early order of bards, oviates, and druids. Ross Nichols was in touch with Gerald Gardner. They spoke, and I'm sure that I mean, it wasn't, they weren't invented at that time, but I mean, it was popularized by definitely the order of bards, oviates, and druids. They had, folklore had talked about stories happening around Samhain and Beltane, and so these holidays were already in folklore, but they weren't really, they weren't necessarily fleshed out and actually made into actual holidays. They were just kind of known about in folklore. And at some point later on, they also began to celebrate the solstices and the equinoxes, which were unnamed. There is no historical names for those holidays. The name of Litha comes from Lord of the Rings. Mabon was pretty much chosen by a gentleman by the name of Aidan Kelly, who is a very prolific writer. Somebody who I've had on my show before. If you go into some of my live streams, I did a show with Aidan Kelly and Ashley Mortimer. We actually talked about Mabon a little bit and the history of Wicca, which is a really good live stream if you ever want to check it out. And then the other ones, Ostara and Yule, obviously, where Yule is a northern tradition. It comes from Yule. It's the name of the season. But it was adopted and put into our, quote unquote, wheel of the year. And Ostara, again, it has origins in the northern Germanic traditions, which is not all that bad. But I think it's good to know the history of these things so we don't blindly make mistakes. I think that that's one of the. I think we need to know the origins of things, even if we don't celebrate it or we don't pay attention to it. I just think it's good to understand where things come from, and so that future generations, if they want to, revise or look back into or whatever, they'll understand where things came from, how they evolved, and it's a good practice. I think that knowing the history of magic is just as important as practicing magic itself. And the same way with the pagan path. It's very important to understand how your ancestors, however you identify, if you identify with multiple ancestors or single ancestors, it's very good to understand how they practiced and what it meant to them and how they did it, so that when you go to do it, you don't, offend your ancestors, or, somehow not practice and not understand what it meant to them. Nowadays our concepts of feast days seem very odd because oh well, we don't get together in large groups and eat, but this is how our ancestors survived winters, was by having large meals with the community, unifying them and coming together. So we have a lot of feast celebrations around this time of year. Autumn festivals, Samhain has feast traditions with it. Thanksgiving has obviously a feast tradition. Even Easter and then Christmas have feast traditions associated with them. And these were very important social events and building blocks for our ancestors. So a lot of these traditions and holidays kind of get, I don't want to say glossed over or looked over, but I think that we can tend to lose sight of what they mean because we're in this day and age where it's the computer and we go onto the computer and we do the research, and it's a very individual thing. It's not a part of a group. It's not a group thing. So let me see. Let me get back into the chat here. So that's a pretty good beginning of it. And I think then I can start inviting some people in. So let me see. If you want to know, ask someone, please. Okay, so let's see. Let me catch up on the chat here. I gave the first like. Thank you, Jeremy. And Leon, let me post a link in Discord. When does fall begin? That's a good question. Here in the Bay Area, fall really begins, I'd say, in like November. That's when our fall begins. If you go by the wheel of the year, it's supposed to begin around September 21st. That's when fall begins. That's when the days begin to get longer, and then we go towards falling into winter. But I'm sure other parts of the world, they probably have fall that starts earlier or later. So it's a really good question. And I think that is one thing that, let me post this link first before I start going on some rambling tirade, and post it in Discord so that Leon can join. Yes, I posted a link in Discord, Leon, if you'd like to jump in. Let's see, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, so those yeah, I completely lost the train of thought that I had. How's it going, Leon?
Good. Good.
Let me see.
I have my book, my quote unquote book of shadows open right now. I've written out a small description of the Wheel of the Year.
Mm-hmm.
This is like a couple of years old, so we're talking about Mabon. I have it written at September 19th through 22nd.
Mm-hmm.
The second harvesting of weaving and proceeding of death of the god and proceeding of the sort of birth of the goddess.
The death of what god?
The death of Conormos or Hearn. I go by um, the Celtic tradition.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm just wondering where you're getting that from. I mean, is there a certain mythology you're going by, or I mean, how did
Um,
how did this come about?
I was reading the story of the the god Conormos and the goddess Diana.
Really?
The
I'm
the
okay.
god
I'm I'm
well
I'm really
the god
fascinated by this because I've never known any stories about Cernunnos.
the god is the god dies
Mm-hmm.
on Sound the death of the god on Samhain,
Mm-hmm.
the death and rebirth of the year. He is
Uh-huh.
reborn on Yule.
Mm-hmm. But
And
do you know what author or what story this is from?
well, I got this from Cunningham's River
Scott
Shadows.
Cunningham. Okay.
Hmm.
And do you know where he got it from?
Uh, Give me a moment. Pull the book out.
Sorry, Leon. I'm just going to tell you right now. I'm a traditionalist. I'm very much into
Oh
finding out
no!
exactly
Oh
where
no!
where things come from and because unfortunately writers like to sell books. That's one of the things that they do, and I can't blame it for them. But often what they'll do is they'll embellish things. They'll borrow and they'll throw things into. And I've never, I'm not a folklorist. I'm not a master of all the stories
Oh
from,
no!
from Celtic
That's
mythology, meaning Ireland, Wales, Gaul, Breton, Cornwall, and even England, Scotland, Isle of Skye. Um, all of these places which are considered to, nowadays we consider them to be like the Celtic realms. Um, but a lot of the stories that we have, I've never come across a story of Cernunnos. I've come across stories of Arun, which is the Welsh ruler of the underworld. I've heard of the Wild Hunt. I've heard,
um,
but I've never known any actual stories that survive of Cernunnos dying around September. So that's why I'm fascinated by
no
this.
no. Um, he begins to weaken on Mabon and leaves this plane to the underworld on Samhain and is reborn on Yule. It I believe it comes from the sacred birth. Yule has always been known as the time of sacred births and Jesus. So I believe it's more of a pagan version of the um, Holy Immaculates from Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
As far as I know, that's an connection I draw anyway.
Yeah, yeah, I see what you're saying. I think the birth of the sun god at the winter solstice is, I can understand that. It has some roots with other traditions, but there's no actual Celtic story or Celtic god that is born at the winter solstice that I'm aware of. Um, it's just that I think that what happened was Scott Cunningham sort of create not really well. I'd have to read the book again so that I don't misrepresent him. But I believe that what he did was he embellished that for his readers, but just wasn't very clear about it. Didn't say like, oh, this is the story. Um, he just kind of like threw it in there. A lot of writers, unfortunately, just do that. They just kind of throw stories in there and don't really say that, well, that's just how I see it. It's not really how the story is.
I have in the book the Samhain chant.
Samhain, yeah.
The Samhain chant. Sorry, I'm
That's
so
okay.
stuck on how to pronounce it. If you guys don't mind, I'll have to read it. If you have time, that is. It's not that long.
I'm sorry. What was that question?
I was hoping I could read the Samhain chant from his Book of Shadows. It might give some context. If we're not crunched for time, that is.
Uh, yeah, sure. Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So just people who are watching know. So this is a chant from Mabon from Scott Cunningham's book.
No, this is the Samhain.
Oh, Silent. And where's it from?
It's from Scott Cunningham's Book of Shadows.
Okay, and what's the name of that book?
That's literally the name of the book. It's
That,
by his Book of Shadows.
Scott Cunningham's Book of Shadows?
Yeah, he made it public for distribution among, I guess, for Wiccans to read.
Is it okay? So was it published under that name?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just getting context.
Okay. The altar is set up, candles and censer are lit, and a circle of stones is cast. The leader says, "Tonight the great gates of the lands of summer are open. For one we hold dear, the sun god is life waning, has made the pleasant journey and enters into the land of youth, until he comes forth again. This is the way for all of us, therefore look, not upon death as a foe to be beaten or a friend to be welcomed too early. Simply see it as but another step into evolvement, an inevitable, as the rising of the sun and the sun and the moon, no more no less. Thus can your life be fully lived, without fear of worry, reborn by the gracious goddess, and thus in time the greatest darkness, there is the greatest light." There's another version in here as well, but
That's
generally just.
yeah, that's okay. That gives us a good understanding of it. So yeah, well, I don't know. I think it's okay. Let me back up a little bit. The reason why I'm very traditionalist is because like Cernunnos has, first of all, the name Cernunnos is Greek. It means the horned one. We don't really know what he was called. We just sort of call him that. Some people say it's Hernunnos. Some people just call him Cernunnos from the Greek, meaning the horned one, because that's just what he was. We actually don't know what, like, for example, the Carnutes. We don't know what the Carnutes actually called this figure that we see on the Gundistrip cauldron, or that we see in other one other form of, well, Gundistrip cauldron is the one that I know about. That the traditional image of that figure, the horn, that antlered figure, comes from, holding a snake and a torque, and then sitting there with other animals around him. Archaeologists and historians have inferred from looking at the symbolism of it that somehow he was associated with nature. The snake represents reincarnation. The torque represents the power and the connection of the human being with the divine, because there's some evidence that we again interpret that the many Celtic tribes believe that the soul of a person lived in their head, and somehow that possibly the torque was associated with that. Again, it's an interpretation that historians and archaeologists have gathered from this material. As for actual stories about Cernunnos, I've never heard any, and I think it's interesting and it's fun to play with stories and begin to put characters into stories that might not exactly have any actual basis in reality, meaning that there's no archaeological evidence or no historical evidence for it. However, if we begin to just assume that this is part of the story, part of the folklore, then we are robbing our future siblings, our future children, our future generations of the, robbing them of the opportunity to find out what exactly that particular figure meant and what actually their stories are. If for some reason we're able to, one day find out more about it. And the farther you go forward in time, the farther you get away from the past, the more obscure and lost it becomes. Like, we don't have records from, thousands of years ago. We do have folklore traditions that were passed on, and stories that we can rebuild, and we have archaeology, and we have history that we can look back on. But I've never heard of any story about Kerninos, so that's why I was raising an eyebrow to it. You know what I mean?
Yes. That book, as far as my education goes, in terms of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Scott Cunningham was a good writer. Unfortunately, I've never recommended him for other people, just because I think that Scott, a lot of the writers in the 70s and 80s, and then even into the 90s, who were writing on Wicca, could not write what they were initiated into and what they actually practiced with their coven, because that was wrong. They just couldn't do it. So if they were going to sit down and write a book, and many writers did this, and then they were scolded by, fellow, other witches. For example, Aidan Kelly is one of them. He published a very in-depth study of Gerald Gardner's Book of Shadows, and people considered that to be a violation. And he was he was kind of ostracized for that. Janet and Stuart Farrar were another couple that was ostracized for, maybe not as badly as Aidan Kelly, but they were sort of ostracized for, quote unquote, releasing material to the general public. So a lot of these writers back then couldn't release the actual material that they were initiated into and that was passed on to them. And so what they did was they kind of fudged it, and they kind of made it up, and they threw in this stuff, and they threw in these stories, and they threw this in, and they kind of cobbled it together, and then gave it to the public. The public picked up the book, and again, they began to sort of use it and change it, and then you started getting all these variations of quote unquote Wicca, which is not bad. I don't think there's anything wrong with it today, but I think that we need to recognize that a lot of these early quote unquote Wicca authors, they created a lot of the stuff that they published. And I'm not saying that that Gardnerian Wicca is, quote unquote, the true, but what they pass along to each of their students is supposed to be the same. So that, for example, if you look at the Book of Shadows of somebody here in San Francisco, California, and you look at the Book of Shadows of somebody who lives in Japan, you should be able to put those two books together and see that they are exactly the same. Now, is this actually what happens? I highly doubt it, because books and things get added and subtracted and stuff like that as time goes on. But I mean, I like stories like that. For example, the story of the Holly King and the Corn King is really interesting. That was really first popularized to the mainstream by Janet Stewart Farrar. Now, that is sort of loosely based on, the Holly King and the Oak King. So that was kind of loosely based on folklore. And the tradition that I was first initiated into, we used the Irish gods in place of them, Nuada and Lu, and as those gods. and but we knew that was forced into it. It was kind of incorporated into it. So, but out of curiosity, what do you like to call it? Do you like to call it Mabon, or do you call it the autumn equinox?
I'm partial to Mabon. That's just the
Okay.
way I've been taught.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've been mostly interested in the tale of the Holly and Oak King
Mm-hmm.
mostly through Wiccan songs I find on Spotify. So,
Mm-hmm.
do you have time to give me some kind of context on, like the line goes, when the sun reaches height, it's a time for the oak and holly to fight. This
Oh,
goes up.
does he use that also in his book?
No, that's from a song I heard. That
Ah,
line.
okay. Mm-hmm.
Um, why do they fight anyway?
Well, it's not necessarily that they fight. It was a symbolic representation of of you know the changing of the seasons, going from summer into winter and then winter into summer. The oak rules during the summer, and then the holly rules during the winter. It was kind of like the green man. It was kind of it was a personification of nature, and there's trying to think.
I
I think it's just kind of like a symbolic representation of the changing of the seasons when you break it down.
I think for what I've heard from can't remember the name of the artist, but I think it's called his name. The Green Man's Jack in the Green.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um, there's a lot of I think some overlap between his story of how he is born, died, and reborn again to the rebirth and death of the gods.
I'm
He
sorry.
is
I'm sorry. What was that?
there's some overlap I think between the Jack and the Green's death and rebirth,
Mm-hmm.
of course, of the seasons.
Hmm. Okay.
That's just to me anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I like to call it the autumn equinox. I call the four fire festivals by their Irish names, and then the four quote unquote lesser fire festivals, the two equinoxes and solstices. I just call them, the winter solstice, summer solstice, autumn equinox, and the spring equinox. That's just I have no imagination around that, but it's funny in a lot of like in Newgrange in Ireland, the opening lines up with the winter solstice, but it doesn't line up with any other time. It doesn't line up with the summer solstice or the equinoxes. And there's various burial mounds that line up with, usually the winter solstice, but occasionally the summer solstice. So, who knows? Maybe the pre-Celtic peoples of Ireland and England celebrated the summer solstice and the winter solstice.
It would make sense because everyone points to Stonehenge, which I believe was one of the most famous solar calendars.
Oh,
Wasn't it?
Stonehenge?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We all know how popular that is during certain seasonal
Mm-hmm.
seasonal equinoxes or
Yeah.
solstices. Sorry, solstices and equinoxes.
Yeah, the summer solstice at Stonehenge is crazy because everybody pretty much gets into one because you want to get into that one position where the sun is rising up over the heel stone in between the trilithons, and that's where everybody wants to be. And so you have these photographers who just camp out there at the minute that the park opens, and yeah, and it gets cold as hell. I could not imagine being there for the winter solstice. That must really be cold. Let me see. Let me see. Just trying to catch up on the chat here. Let me see. Okay. I answered that. Let me see. Jeremy said, only Wiccan book I know I have called Solitary Witchcraft. Okay. And Animus is here. Hey, Animus, how's it going? Let's see, folks. Hey, Emrys, how you doing? A lot of the Labyrinth podcast said a lot of the 80s, 90s Wiccans are also perpetuating a false history of Wicca created to make it the old religion. Yeah, I think it's I think it's really difficult to put a start date on quote unquote Wicca. You know, and the reason why I say that is because Gerald Gardner claims to have been initiated into the New Forest Coven in 1939, I believe. But he claims to have been initiated into a New Forest Coven at that time. There was, for example, the Order of Bards, Ovids, and Druids. There was the Rosicrucians. There was the Order of the Golden Dawn. There were many people who still kind of looked back towards the old pagan practices. So, and when I did an analysis of the material that I have access to, that actually the entire public has access to, and I went through and I looked and I counted the various words, and I divided this material that I had into what pertained to the Order of the Golden Dawn, what pertained to Aleister Crowley, what pertained to other various sources like Charles Godfrey Leland. I noticed that there was still a large chunk. There was I forget how much it was, if it was like 51% or it was nearly half of it. I could actually look up the chart. But there was a good percentage of it that had no source. It was either entirely created by Gerald Gardner, or it was material that was passed on to him from some other organization. Now how old that, like, for example, if it is true that it came from the New Forest Coven, if how old the New Forest Coven was, I really don't know. I know that what's his name? Philip Heselton did a great deal of research into it and into researching the origins of the people that Gerald Gardner knew and members of the New Forest Coven, and he's done some research into that, and it's very fascinating. So I like to say that Gardnerian Wicca started in 1939, but I think it's based upon older material. And if you look, and when you study the Western occult tradition, and especially the Key of Solomon and the Athame, the concept of casting a circle with a sword, you can see that has parallels in the Western occult tradition. Now, people could say that that's because Gardner took material from Aleister Crowley and the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, and that material was probably in there. But in the original Key of Solomon, the one that MacGregor Mathers translated from, there is the mention of obtaining a witch's blade. So I think that there's definitely a lot of research that needs to be done in that area, but I don't think I don't know. I'm still up in the air whether or not to say that Wicca was entirely created in 1939 by Gerald Gardner, or if he fleshed out something that somebody else had began, to practice. So that is my take on that. But I'm more than happy to say that it started in 1939 because that's as far back as we can historically and accurately prove it started. Let me see what else. Oh my God, the Mabon question. There were rumors of stuff like Don Craig getting in threats from covens. Yes, exactly. Let me see. When people are hungry for some venerable item, gods. Lady Labyrinth was saying, oh yeah, talking about the OBOD. I was a pain to find out information about the Eleusinian rites. So they're just kind of talking back and forth. Also, was in circle with some Wiccans. The leader said, remove your watch if you want it to work still. Yes, that is something that I heard too. Yep. Yeah, it's really interesting. I have a clock directly above my altar, and I didn't notice it, but I don't know if it was just a coincidence or the battery temporarily died or I put the battery in wrong or something, but it stopped for about a day, and I took the battery out and put the battery back in, and it started up again. It was really bizarre. So I don't know. I mean, I heard that too. But I thought it was metaphorical, meaning like, you know, you're in a time where time doesn't exist. You're you're creating a space between two worlds, and in that world, time and stuff like that just doesn't exist. And I thought that was where it came from. Let me see. But of course, that's never happened. That's never happened to my clock before, and I've had it up there for years. It was because we were doing something out of time. Right. Yeah, Jeremy. Hey, Dorian, how's it going?
Hey, Dorian.
Good to see him. So you like Scott Cunningham, huh? You have a couple of his books?
I have practitioner, practice for solitary practitioner, and his Book of Shadows right here. So,
are there some other authors that you've read that you like?
Let's see. Some what I call fluffy. When I first started out, I have it's like a magic encyclopedia of magical ingredients. That's pretty much all I have currently on me.
Now, why do you call that book fluffy?
I don't know. When I first started reading it, you know, I was working to more serious and looking authors. But I've read through it a couple times. A lot of times. Ironically enough, the first time I saw this book was at my local library, which is about a block away from a church. I found that very ironic. And I read through the book. It's by Lexa. Butcher her last name. Roseanne.
It's by who?
Lexa Roseanne. It has a funny E, so I can't pronounce the funny E. So,
okay.
But that's those three are the only books I currently have on me. Other than my tarot books, of course, which I have a shit ton of.
Yeah. Well, I'm some of my authors that I really recommend to anybody who wants to. I think it's really good to understand the basis of Gardner's form of witchcraft, and then from there begin to build off of that. So I always recommend people read, first of all, Gerald Gardner, you know, and definitely Janet Stewart Farrar. And I think that reading those books is going to give you a very good foundation, and then from there, you know, read whatever you want. But if you kind of understand that core, that sort of root, then you can see how when you start reading other people, you're going to see, oh, they borrowed that from that and they changed this, and you can kind of see how it's evolved. I've never read Lady Labyrinth podcast was mentioned Cunningham and Christopher Penczak. And I don't know, I've heard a lot of good stuff about Christopher Penczak, but I've honestly never read any of his stuff. I'm sure he's a good author. But after a while, after reading, authors, you begin, you look at the back and you look at the books that they studied, and you find that it's a handful of books, and those handful of books are the ones that I recommend, and usually that's what they build off of. And
Um, there's I have Audible, and I've been wanting to chow down on Buckland. Buckland's Big Blue Book, as my friend calls it.
the what?
Forgot his first name, but his last name is Buckland.
Oh yeah, Raymond Buckland, right? Yeah,
I've been meaning to chow down that book for a while.
yeah.
I
Yeah,
might.
now Raymond Buckland is somebody that I don't recommend if they're just starting out. Again, Ray Buckland had to do the same thing. He couldn't publish Gardner's material, so he made up Sex Wicked, and he made up the other stuff. I mean, saying made up is kind of not accurate. He built upon it and embellished stuff. I think is it not? Well, maybe embellish isn't a good word either. he he borrowed a lot of material and did his own research and built upon that material. So, but he's a good author. I think his Big Blue Book is a really good introduction because it kind of shows people how to not be so dependent upon uh, buying stuff and actually getting in there and making some stuff. And he also wrote that book as to be like a training book. There's questions after each chapter, and he gives you a lot of really good information. So it's a very good book. But again, I don't think it really shows what's it? I want to use the word virgin, but I know it has connotations to it. But this sort of what it originally was, and then how other people built upon it. I think that Raymond Buckland is a good example of that. You know, um,
um,
and let me see. Hold on one second. And also, Lady Labyrinth mentioned Lori Cabot. And Lori Cabot, I like her. I like Lori Cabot. That's why I when I did that Voodoo by Godsmack, I included her, the part that she played in that video, and her coven. I included that in it because I like Lori Cabot. But I believe that Lori Cabot claims to have come from a family tradition, a family lineage, which again, I don't have any way to verify the family lineage, so I take her word for it. Same way I take everyone's word for it who claims they have a family lineage. And she's done a lot to perpetuate witchcraft. So I think she's definitely, I would consider her a leader in the community because she's done a lot, especially in Boston, Massachusetts, for witchcraft. So yeah, I like her, regardless of whatever you think of her, origin story. I still think she's a great lady.
um, while I have you here, I've been meaning to ask someone because whenever I go to buy my books or buy a book, I keep seeing these 1001 free spell books, or I call catalog of spells. What
Mm-hmm.
do you think of those books, or do you think they're a cash cow, or do you think could be legit? I've been seeing some on Audible as well.
Um, I think somebody wrote it to make money. Yes. I think there's authors out there who write books because, well, they want to write books, but they're also writing books to make money. But they actually care about what they're writing. And then I think there's people who basically just slap anything together and put a price tag on it and sell it to people hoping to make money, and they really don't care how they make their money or how proven the information is in their book or how accurate it is, and they just put it out there. I think that any spell that you either get from a book or you get from another person, I mean, introductory books have spells in them. There's usually like a love spell in there and a money spell or a spell to heal your pet or whatever. There's usually spells in there already. I think it's very important for people to understand that it's not who created the spell or what elements you put into it or what stones you put into it or what oils you put into it or what herbs you use or what colors you use or what music you're listening to. None of all of these things kind of help to sort of get you into the mood and focus it, but 100% of your intention is coming from you. It's not coming from anywhere else. It's not coming from that rose quartz. It's not coming from the words that you're reading off of that paper that you copy down or whatever, or if you're just doing it off the cuff. None of it really has that much effect upon it. It's you. It is what you are going to do with that intention. If you are putting a spell out there as an intention to get the love of your life to come into your life, that's all you. That's 100% you. And how you conduct that spell and how you enact it and how you want it and how you see it come about is all you. So I think if you buy a book of 101 spells, find a spell that you find that appeals to you. Like, for example, if you're going to do a love spell and you find you look through this book and you read, I'm sure there's probably like 20 spells in there for love. Find one that you like and then make it your own. Switch out words and make those your own words. Make it yours. You can use it as a template, but make it yours. And when you go in to put your intention into that, that is now your spell. It's no longer whoever wrote that book. So I think it's a good launching board, but I wouldn't place too much emphasis on a spell book, you know. Does that answer your question?
It does. It does. I'm still a little shy, so I tend to ramble.
No, that's okay. That's all right. Yeah, and you know, it's yeah. I mean, we can get wrapped up in you know having tools and toys and stuff like that, and it's I think, and I mentioned this yesterday. It's kind of a tightrope walk because you want to keep it yours. You want to keep it as a part of you. You want to keep it to be, you know, you want to understand that magic, that change that you are wanting to occur in the world, it's going to come from you. But those things that you use are sort of like focus elements. They're kind of like things to put in there so that you know that they resonate with that, and it's you're kind of building a I don't know what's I want to say psychological amplifier, but that doesn't really make any sense. It's a way of using those tools and those things to focus your intention. I guess it's like the difference between somebody who draws with their fingers versus somebody who draws with a brush. You know, you can do art with your finger. You can dip your finger in paint and, you know, paint like that and use various degrees of pressure, or maybe use your pinky or your thumb or your palm or whatever to get different patterns. Or you can use various brushes to do the same thing to get different patterns and create that work of art the same way. And that's kind of like how the tools are. Let me see. Love that. You know, for the same. Oh, okay, good. Thanks. Hey, Baked Alaska. Or Baked to Jesus, not Baked Alaska. Site delivery against fear. Yeah, exactly. It counts if you feel. There are plenty of resources for the basics, but being tied to the results of your magic is easier than you make up your own spells. Yeah, exactly. I agree. I just do it. Jeremy's just like, I just do it. Dorian says it's a way to ground your energy and focus it to complete the work. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I got a little reluctant to use sigil magic. The sigil doesn't necessarily care about collateral damage. Animus is I love Animus. He's fucking hilarious.
In that spell I performed for my friend, I combined the use of tarot and sigil.
Mm-hmm.
I drew on the sun. Hold on.
Do you want to do a survey about the election?
Hold on.
Mm-hmm. So anyhow, let's see. Maybe you could just turn your mic off.
Okay, hold on.
Let me see. So anyhow, I guess we'll talk about sigils. I mean, I did a video on sigils. Now the way that I look at sigils is they're kind of like a thought. Like, okay, if you could imagine, like, let's say you have a paragraph that you write in a book, and this paragraph, you're describing a situation in a paragraph that you're writing, and you're describing a particular situation as you write this paragraph. It's very difficult to, like, let's say you pull out your intention and you sit there and you focus. Maybe you want to focus your intention on getting love, and so you have this whole paragraph that you're written out about, how you're going to find love and what it's going to be like and all this stuff. And so you create this long paragraph. Instead of reading this whole long paragraph over and over again every time you want to say focus your attention on that, or use it as a focus. Instead, what you do is you break down that paragraph to its essential thought. That's how I view sigils. I view sigils as the essential thought of what it is you want that sigil to represent. That's how I view sigils. Now, I often qualify everything by saying this is what I do, and I give historical backgrounds for it. When I did that sigil video, I gave the background for it. I think that it's very important that when I give information to people, people know exactly where it came from. It's not just something that I pulled out of my ass or just one day decided to do. With the exception of the rose cross, or not rose cross, but the rose dial that I used in that sigil magic video. That was a creation based upon Donald Craig's Rosicrucian cross. So yeah, that I kind of created, that I kind of fudged. But for the most part, I like to give people, let them understand where I get things and how I come up with them. And people are going to disagree with me, and that's fine. They may have another concept of what a sigil is and how to create a sigil. It'd be interesting to find out what they believe, where it came from. I'm always interested in, I love hearing about people's knowledge, but I'm also interested in, like, where did you get that knowledge? And I think we need to be more discerning. I think we're getting to the point where we're getting information overload on YouTube. Like, you can watch 100 videos on the same topic and you're going to get 100 different opinions. Is everybody right? Or are some people more right than others? And I think that that's where discernment comes in. And I think we need to you need to kind of have a magnetic north. If you don't have a magnetic north, you're just going to be wandering around in circles. You have to have something to lead you back to, I don't want to use the word truth, but it's going to be your magnetic north. It's going to be that that this is where it came from. Now, whether or not you believe that to be accurate, there's a lot of medieval superstitious Christian nonsense in magical grimoires that I completely ignore. I think it's useless. There's a lot of information about, parts of the body coordinating with the planets that I don't necessarily put a lot of emphasis on. There's a lot of herbs and stuff that I don't put emphasis on. I don't put emphasis on crystals. You know, there are people who do, and that's fine. But for myself, it's just not part of my practice. Astrology is another thing. I don't go by the geocentric model of the astrology. I go by a heliocentric model. So I'll wait for Leon to get back. Come back to the chat here. So I take this guy you're chatting with is really new to the Wiccan path. Yeah, I believe he is. Yeah, Lee Labyrinth. I have been so busy with moving and school. Yeah, no worries, Dorian. When you get settled down, just tap us on the shoulder. So we're we're planning to start Heathen Haven up again. We're just waiting for you to get settled down, and don't feel rushed. Get to the point where you're like actually everything is settled down. You actually have a chance to first relax, and then when you feel ready, let us know. And if you need a little more time, let us know, because maybe we'll just go ahead and start up, and then you can jump in later on. So just let us know, Dorian, because I don't want to leave you out of that process. Let me see. Oh, Emrys says one of the things I've done is make sigils with Om or beads. Yeah, exactly. I think the Om is a fascinating way to. It is really, if you work with the Futhark runes, or you work with the Welsh Colbrin, or you work with the Ohms, or you work with the Thebes, the quote unquote witches runes. If you work with any of those, they're like perfect for creating sigils. The Theban alphabet, it's a little more difficult, because it's a little more difficult. I've tried to do it before, but it is possible to do. But sometimes it can get a little confusing. Let me see.
I'm back out of the way.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, welcome back.
I had someone called about a political survey.
A political survey, huh? What was the political? What was the survey? Out of curiosity.
Who I vote for? Who I voted for? How I view the candidates for the next election, the midterms. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, you can wait till November.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't like those calls when they call you up and say, "Are you going to vote for so and so?" Or I don't know. I mean, politics right now is just so. It's just so gangster. I mean, it is. They just don't care anymore. They're just the propaganda machine on both sides is revved up on high, and I mean, people are actually resorting to violence. People are resorting to violence over political positions. I've never, ever seen that in my entire life. I mean, if I don't like somebody for their politics, I'm not going to take a swing at them. I mean, I just walk away from them, But, I grew up in a neighborhood, like, if you looked at somebody funny, well, you're in a fight. But you never like, oh, well, you're a Democrat or you're a Republican, I'm gonna beat your ass. It wasn't to that. Let's see. Hey, Billy, how's it going? Billy says, when Jupiter is in Uranus, you've got problems. Yes, that is true. When you get Saturn in Uranus. When you got Pluto in Uranus, that's a problem. Let me see. Language members. Yeah, I'm always trying to come up with different names for videos. But yeah, this whole political atmosphere is just crazy. So so now how long have you been practicing? Or sounds like a little while. You've been reading and stuff.
Yeah, I've been off and on I started. This is gonna be very typical, but I left Christianity. I left a very stereotypical Pentecostal.
Mm-hmm.
Someone got the spirit right next to me. And I'm like, I'm out. That
So
day,
you were a Pentecostal?
well, I was mostly for my sister who was Pentecostal.
Mm-hmm. But I mean,
Went,
is that what it's called? Is it called Pentecostal?
yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm just not familiar with all the various
Oh no, it's okay. It's okay.
denominations.
I left. Well, actually, to start back during high school, one of my classmates was a Wiccan, and
Mhm.
that's where I first heard of it. I got interested in it, but I had no access to any kind of practice.
Yeah.
And then I just kind of studied off and on. And when I moved back here, I was like, you know what? After the incident at the Pentecostal church revival of all places, and I was like, okay, I think I'm just going to leave the faith for a bit, and I did. I stumbled onto Dark Matter 2525, I think an atheist, and I floated with atheism for a while. I still call myself somewhat atheist, but I always had this pull towards Wicca, although I don't use that term anymore. It's mostly witchcraft. And when I bought um, Scott Cunningham's um, practice for the solo practitioner,
Mhm.
that's when I really sunk my teeth into it.
Mhm. So now, how does the rest of your family feel about? Are they still Pentecostal?
My sister is, but also my family's Baptist.
Mhm. But I mean, are they pretty accepting of your practice?
Only my mom knows,
Hmm.
and all she knows is through my tarot.
Hmm.
That's kind of how I do my practice because I can do it under the radar.
Hmm.
No one's just doing tarot. Goes, oh, he's just playing his tarot. And I'm like, no, I'm actually doing a spell.
So you still kind of in the closet.
Yeah,
Hmm.
but it's a way I can hide my craft and still do my stuff.
Hmm.
It's just when I bring out the Athame, the books, and the salt water that I get questions.
I'm sorry. What was that?
It's just when I bring out the Athame, the salt water, and the books do I get questions.
What about the salt water? I missed that.
Oh, for purifications, for cleansing the room before I do my spell.
Oh, okay. Uh, oh, okay. So I mean, like, I'm just wondering, like, do you think that the people at that particular church would be accepting if they found out that you practice
Oh,
witchcraft or
hell no.
no? Oh, okay. Well, I mean,
Yeah,
some Christians are very accepting. Others are, obviously the ones I focus on, they're not very accepting.
I just live by the term of live and let live.
Hmm.
Ironically, funny enough, I've had this pull, I guess, because I seek community more than I seek actual church. And I've been feel like a bit of a pull back to it, if that makes sense.
Hmm. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, well, because I grew up in a home where there wasn't really any particular religion. I mean, if anything, we were like Unitarian Universalists. I mean, we were very open, um, and so I felt kind of I felt very free to sort of explore and to look into other beliefs and other ideas and other concepts. And I was always very much, I was actually, when I was younger, I was very much into, believing in a God and in a monotheistic deity. And as time went on, and I felt like I was trying to connect with this deity and get an understanding of it and really looking at the world and everything around me, it began to sort of fall away. like I couldn't see the quote unquote Christian God that was in the Bible. I just couldn't see that. I couldn't see how a deity could create everything and then allow everything to sort of, get mucked up and fucked up the way it was. So then I sort of began to kind of create my own concept of what a god was. And then when I got into studying Celtic mythology, I started looking into the ancestral deities and other gods and heroes and stuff and the mythologies. And then I began to, my concept of deity went from a monotheistic position to more of a polytheistic position. And that polytheistic position then sort of melded into an atheistic position where I saw the gods as aspects of ourselves. So, for example, a person can have aspects of all the various mythological deities within them. And this was pretty much reinforced by looking at the Greek model. The Greeks and Romans really made their gods very human. Like they bickered, they fought, they were jealous, they were envious, they would trick people, they would come down, they would sleep with humans. They were no longer, these sort of, immortal, unembellished, they were these faulty gods. And so that's when I began to see, oh, these are actually aspects of ourselves. And that's how I view deity to this day, as I see them as sort of representations of the various aspects of ourselves. So my evolution of belief in deities got me to the point where I am now. But yeah, because sometimes I hear people, they talk about, like they have to kind of like practice in secret. They can't tell their parents, they can't tell their friends, they can't tell anybody. Then that they practice because they feel that they would be shunned or excommunicated, or people would think they're Satan worshipers or whatever. Luckily, I didn't grow up that way. Like I told various family members that I was a pagan and I believed in witchcraft and all this stuff, and they were very accepting of it. But it's also the area that I grew up in. It's much more open and liberal than other parts of the world. Obviously because it's California, sometimes it's a little too liberal. But I would prefer a place to be more too liberal than not liberal enough. So,
ironically, it was my witchcraft practice that made me liberal.
oh, really? Interesting. How so?
It began with my friend in high school. About little we talked about it, and then after I fell away from the church, getting into I think an atheist. Start after about 25 is more the atheist YouTubers, and uh, along with that, learning more from the books that I've been reading, and then I found um, more liberal YouTubers along with more Wiccan YouTubers that it just clicks, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I think YouTube were really pulling me away from what I view as, well, a church that I went to in more of a destructive path. Because I went back there not too long ago, and I don't even recognize the place anymore. It is more of a cult to, well, you know who, than an actual church. And I don't go that area anymore. So yeah, I'm like, if this is what religion is nowadays, I don't want to be a part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, like I said yesterday, I mean, I'm very much a person that I think that you should be allowed to find your own way. I really hate dogma, and that's one of the things that I really dislike about organized religion, is that kind of like, okay, well, this is what I believe, and you have to believe it, and we all believe that, and if you don't believe us, then you can't be a part of us, and you're whatever it is, and they just kind of cast you out. And I don't think that that's very fair. I think that everybody should be allowed to think for themselves and to develop their own beliefs wherever that may lead them, you know. And then there are some people that actually need that. They need that structure. These are the type of people who get into cults and really become very into religion because they need. I honestly believe they need somebody to think for them. They need somebody to tell them how to think, what to believe, how to act. They need everybody to sort of tell them that. And they enjoy giving that control over to people so that they can kind of, sort of take a driver's seat position to life. And that's like complete opposite of me. I don't believe that. I think you should be firmly planted in the driver's seat of wherever you're going in life. You shouldn't be another passenger on a bus. So that's how I view it.
If I may ask,
Mm-hmm.
where did you get your YouTube channel name? I know you changed it from. I might try and pronounce that name
From
to
my
Health on
Loken
Heathen.
Sketch.
Oh, what?
I the term Hellbound Heathen.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and then the channel name that I had before that was my name, which was Loken Sketch.
It took me a while to learn how to pronounce that correctly.
Yeah. And then most people have a hard time with Loken, so I just say, you know what, just call me Ken. So now people on YouTube are starting to call me Ken, so it's funny.
And did you draw your icon yourself?
Huh?
Did you draw your icon yourself? Your devil icon?
No. This was an image that I found online,
Mm-hmm.
and I fixed it up and colorized it.
Nice.
Yeah. So no, I didn't draw that myself. But there was nobody I could credit for the image. There was no, so it was just there. But yeah, Hellbound Heathen is actually a name that, I mean, I've heard that term like, oh, you're a Hellbound Heathen. But there's a YouTube channel called Poisoning the Well. Have you ever heard them, seen them?
No, sadly.
Okay. Well, you should check them out. They're called Poisoning the Well, and I think anybody here, if you haven't seen them, you should check them out. They're these two comedians who have a channel together, and they're hilarious. And they put out videos probably almost as sporadically as I do, but their videos are really well done and they're really well scripted, and they play off of each other very well. They've obviously been friends for a long time, so they have that they're able to play comedic timing off of each other, which is something that most couples, and when I say couples, I mean like the people in the videos, it takes a long time for them to develop, but these guys have it down pat. Anyhow, they would call their viewers Hellbound Heathens. And I was like, you know what? That's what I should call my channel. I should call my channel Hellbound Heathen, because I've heard people call me Hellbound Heathen. They use that term, and I typed it into YouTube to change my channel name, and it was available. And I said, yep, that's it. And then from there, I created this little icon and revamped my channel. And I wanted to do that because, people would look at my Loken Sketch and they'd be like, what the hell is this? They didn't. And yeah, I did want to branch out and grow my audience. And I felt like doing that was sort of limiting because you don't know what the hell that is. The average person doesn't know what it is, but, maybe somebody who's into Irish and Scottish mythology would know what that is. But I mean, like most pagans I encounter, I don't know how many of them actually know the history of especially warrior Scathach, or let alone the Scottish hero Lyloken, you know. So so I changed it to something that was more easy for people to understand and also to say, and so that's how Hellbound Heathen was started.
I don't have the equipment or the balls to make a YouTube channel myself. I'm way too reserved and shy.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean it's not for everybody, you know. I think that when you begin to make videos, you really open yourself up to other people judging you and, you know, listening to what you say and disagreeing with you. And some people are relatively civil about it, and sometimes people are just outright, you know, assholes about it. Like I get into, you know, I get into word battles with people, you know, because of the content that I do. And, you know, it's okay. I knew what I was getting into when I created a YouTube channel, and I actually went around various parts of social. I didn't have that much of a social media fingerprint to begin with, but I began to sort of slowly erase whatever fingerprint I did have, uh, so that, you know, at some point, if somebody wanted to, you know, try to, I don't know, try to attack me in my real life, it would be difficult. Not impossible, but it's going to be more difficult than it would for other YouTubers out there who, you know, use their real name and stuff like that. So I would recommend, if you do ever start a YouTube channel, don't use your real name. Maybe only use an icon. Be aware of the possibility that family, employers, friends, acquaintances, old high school, you know, buddies, college people will recognize it. And, you know, whatever you're putting out there, you know, it could come back to you. So if you're trying to stay in the closet and you're creating and you're using your real name, you're creating, you know, material talking about witchcraft and the occult and all these super spooky things, or what people consider to be spooky, you know, and if you live in like a conservative area, you might be setting yourself up for some trouble, you know. You just got to be aware of that.
I already have my icon. You've seen it pop up whenever I chant the Scarborough Umbra. I'll have to ask Insular Exchange for permission to use it, of course. But I'll use, if I do use Midget, I'll use that as my icon. But no, if I ever do start a YouTube channel, it won't be in here. I'll probably have a place of my own or apartment of my own if I ever attempt something like that.
Yeah. So it's just one of those things you have to be aware of, you know. I don't mind getting into disagreements with some people. Sometimes it can be not really challenging as much as it can be just a brain drain. You know, it's just kind of like, how many times can I give somebody a piece of actual evidence proving that something is wrong or incorrect? And, you know, I'll do a whole video on it. I'll research it. I'll give the links. I'll put the link in the description of the video. I'll upload that video to YouTube. Somebody will watch it and they'll respond with, well, what about such and such? And I'm just like, you know, face palming at home, reading the comment going, you fucking idiot. I put it in the goddamn fucking video. Just watch the fucking video. Click the link if you have any questions. I don't know how much easier I could make it for some people. Like, I guess I could go over to their house and click the mouse for them. Okay, here, read this.
I noticed sometimes when on your video response, you'll say, I said such and such in such video. Yeah, I've noticed saying that a lot more.
What was that?
I noticed that you've been in your video responses to those idiots. You say, "Oh, I I already said this topic on this such video. Please go watch that video before I
Yeah,
continue on this."
yeah,
So
yeah. It's kind of like I kind of don't like to do that too much because chances are people aren't going to um, people aren't going to watch a second video, just for depending upon what it is, because most of us, we have beliefs, and we have beliefs that are reinforced by whatever it is around us. So if you are a person who grew up in kind of like this conspiracy atmosphere, or you kind of have this concept of these conspiracies, you've already you've built up this sort of world around you where this is what's going on, and you have to be aware of this. And when somebody challenges that worldview, or that idea, or those concepts, or those opinions, you're hesitant and you're resistant to it. So chances are, unless the information is literally spoon fed to you, you're not going to explore it any further. That's why in my videos I really try to give the information to people in that video right there, so they can do it. And I try to give the information in such a way where it's addressing those people who are conspiracy nuts, who chances are probably 99% of them are going to shut off the video with their minds not changed. The link's right there. They're not even going to check the link. But then there's also my other viewers who are interested in this. Like, maybe they go, oh, well, that's really interesting about Baphomet. I never knew that. I never knew that Eliphas Levi created him, or I never knew it was based off of this. And so they'll click the link and they'll find out, oh, wow, you know what? And then, so the people who are interested in the information, they'll learn something from it, hopefully, if they don't already know it. And so I try to kind of keep a balance between giving information to conspiracy nuts, and then also giving the information to, general viewers and stuff. And yeah, that is pretty much about it. We barely talked about the topic.
oh, I'm sorry about
Oh
that.
no, it's not your fault. Doctrine Enforcer says, y'all some conspiracy nuts, maybe. Hey, Doctrine Enforcer, are you willing to put your mouth to the test? I'm feeling rambunctious.
Lady.
Yeah.
Hey, um, we kind of chewed up a lot of time tonight. Um, oh, that could be an hour late.
Oh, well, I don't want to keep you.
Oh no, it's a Twitch show called Critical Role. It's a weekly D&D show. Um, I'm now subscribed to, so I can watch whatever the hell I want. But um, if you want to go back on topic, I have hours.
5 hours. So what was that thing that you were talking? Is there something that you're going to later?
Oh no, it's a show called Critical Role on Twitch. It's a bunch of, and the words of Matt Mercer, bunch of nerdy ass sports actors who sit around and play D&D.
Oh, you know what? I think I have stumbled across that show before. It's like a group of some guys who are gamers, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I've stumbled across their videos a couple of times.
If it
Yeah, because go ahead.
oh, if it wasn't for them, my friend Angie, I would have never gotten the nerve to play D&D. So
Mhm. Well, not surprising. Doctor suddenly disappeared. I think it's funny as hell. People come, they wanna troll and they want to cause problems, and then when I invite them on, they're like, actually, gee, I got a steak in the oven. I got to check my laundry.
This is the reason why I love Heathen so much. Not so much for the I love the video, but when a troll pops in, Loki or Dorian, you would just rip them to shreds.
Well, I've always I've invited everybody who I've done video responses. I've invited onto my channel. I invited Now You See TV onto my channel. I invited Through the Black on my channel. I've invited Bill Schnoblin on my channel. I've invited there are so many people I've invited on my channel to talk about it. Like, people have said, you and Bill Schnoblin ought to get together and talk. And I'm like, yeah, I'd love to have him on my channel, you know, but he's afraid of me. He's blocked me. He's, you know, I mean, all these people have blocked me because they're just scared of me. Yeah, so Labyrinth, yeah, that's the only way, because I can't post the link in the chat, because if I do, somebody will come on and you know, play porno. So I can't do that.
Yeah.
Hey, Doctrine, you're looking real bad here, because I've invited you on, and I guess you just want to safely and anonymously post. So, well, that's all right. If he bothers you guys, just block him on your end. But oh, and also Labyrinth, if you're, I got to figure out how I can get you onto here. All right.
Is Labyrinth on Discord?
No, Labyrinth. I'd have to invite you via Twitter, or through Discord. So if you're in my Discord server, hop onto my Discord server, and I can get you in from there. Where can I find this channel to challenge him? So, okay, so Doctrine, if you want to join me, you're going to have to be on Twitter. And I'll give you my my Twitter handle. That's my Twitter handle. And shoot me a message, and I'll give you a link.
Is your Twitter private currently?
I had it private for a while, and then I made it, and then somebody said, "Hey, how come your Twitter is private?" Because every time I would send a link or do something like that, they would look at it, and it would be like there would be no attachment. So I made it public. I only made it private for a little while, just so because really the only people that I interact with on Twitter are people who I know through YouTube, or I know through Facebook. So they're people that I sort of know, and I don't know. I'm just not very.
No. Speaking of Facebook, I am happy to report that I finally left Facebook completely, because I don't do that shit anymore. And half my family's on Facebook, so it's kind of hard to do anything on there.
Mm-hmm. So that critical role or what is it called? Critical dice, or
Critical Role.
Critical Role. Now, do they have games that people can join?
No, it's more of a how can I describe it? It's more of a you know what's all radio shows? The Adventures of such and such. It's more of a live D&D performance kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Versus the DM, and it played D&D live for an audience, basically. They're on their second season currently.
All right, I'm figuring out how I can get Labyrinth in here. Let me see. Can I send them a message? Labyrinth on Facebook. Okay, so Labyrinth, what I'm going to do is I'm on your Facebook page right now, Labyrinth. So I'm pasting the Discord into your message. I'm sending you a private message on Facebook to Labyrinth's Men's Spiritual Podcast, and from there you can join Discord, and then I can invite you on. Sent you a Twitter message for link. Oh, okay, good.
Oh, I'm sorry, Hellbound. I have to fix some stuff on Warframe. I'm
No
still
problem.
here.
No problem.
Just fixing some stuff.
No problem. No problem. I'm just going to talk with this guy for a little while, and find out what his concern is. So yeah, well, hey, thanks, Leon. Thanks for joining, and I will probably talk to you again.
Oh, no problem. Hopefully I can join the one on Sunday.
Yes.
Is it Saturday or Sunday?
Oh, Saturday.
Oh,
Saturday.
okay. All right. I will talk to you then.
Okay. See you later.
Bye.
Bye. All right. So I sent a link to Doctrine Enforcer, and then I also sent a link to Labyrinth. So I'm going to be ready with the kick button if this person's tries to be funny. So how's it going? Who is this?
This is Doctor Enforcer. Where's everybody at?
Just me, buddy. What's up?
You're not the regular guy on this channel.
Doctor, I don't have much time. What's your problem?
Let me ask you a question. Is Jesus a pregnant woman killer?
Is Jesus a what?
Pregnant woman killer.
Where does it say that in the Bible?
Use your God-given brain.
I am using my brain. Where does it say that in the Bible?
It says he's the maker, right? He's the son of God, right?
It says what's in the maker? What are you talking about?
Jesus in the book.
Which book?
The Bible.
Which Bible?
Okay, I'm just going to play games.
I'm just wondering which Bible. There's, you know how many Bibles
Any
there are?
Bible.
Which one?
Christian Bible, you know, the Old Testament, New Testament.
Yeah, okay, but which Christian Bible?
Any one of them.
Okay, so the King James Version of the Bible?
Yes.
Okay. Where does it say that?
So you wanted to say straight out, hey, I'm a baby killer?
What do you... I invited you on asking you what's your problem, and you said that Jesus is some pregnant woman.
I asked you a question, you can't answer it.
What's the question?
Is Jesus a pregnant woman killer?
I have no idea. I have no idea. Where you're getting that from the King James Version of the Bible?
Yes. Is he not King of the Jews?
I have no idea. I don't know your Bible. So is that your problem, that that King James Version of the Bible believes that Jesus is a pregnant woman?
Killer.
Okay. So that's why you're in my chat causing
No, I just asked you a
rage and
question,
dust?
and you don't know what you're talking about.
That's because what you're talking about makes no sense.
Okay. Do you
Yeah.
know the Jews?
Do I know the Jews? Every single one of them? No.
Do you believe that they existed?
Do I believe they existed?
The Israelites.
You mean like as a civilization or a culture or a language?
Like they were led by Moses to the promised land.
Yeah, but what are you defining as the Jews or the Hebrews? I don't understand that.
I'm trying to tell you that they were baby killers.
Okay, so you believe that the Jews were baby killers.
Yes.
Okay. And
So I'm asking you if you read the Bible. You probably don't believe in it. That's fine. But if Jesus is the King of the Jews, is he associated with baby killing?
I have no idea. I wasn't alive back then. So
I'm not understanding
I
you.
feel like
No.
what you're doing is you're dancing around something and you're just not coming out with it. What
No, I
is it
just don't
exactly you
understand
want
you
to come out
people.
with?
You don't believe in it. You don't believe in the story. It's just a story, but you won't tell the story correctly.
Yeah. Okay.
It's just a story. Why do you have to lie about it?
Uh-huh. And how am I lying about it?
What does the Bible say? Was there a Noah's Day flood? Who pulled the plug on that water?
Who I'm sorry. I almost spit up my water. Who pulled the plug on the what?
Who caused the great flood?
Who caused the great flood? The Calgon man?
Are you a Bible reader?
No, I'm not. I only study the Bible when I have to respond to some conspiracy nut who believes in some crazy shit.
Well, that crazy nut Dan Barker may not believe in it, but at least he tells the story correctly.
Okay, so I'm telling a story incorrectly?
Yes, you're like that damn coward Delahanty.
Uh-huh. Okay, I see. And where exactly did I tell you this story that was incorrect?
I asked you a few questions and you just don't know what the hell you're talking about.
Oh, okay. What's the question? Is it beyond the whole Jesus pregnant Jewish drowning, pulling the plug on Noah's Ark? Is there any other questions you have beyond that?
No, that's all.
That's it? That's it?
That's it.
That's all you got?
Yes, that's all I got.
Oh, for the love. Later.
Peace out.
What an idiot. All right. That was a waste of time. Sorry about that, guys. I thought that oh, well, whatever. I thought it was going to be like an actual, discussion. Like he was going to say, "Well, you pagans are this way," and then I could say, "Well, no, actually, we're not." He was just, I don't know, he must be off his medication. That's what I'm thinking. Poor guy. All righty. So, I guess that's about it. I thought that was going to be semi-entertaining, but no, it wasn't. It was actually quite boring. Oh man. So a word of warning to trolls out there: if you come to my channel and troll, I'm going to call you out. All right. Labyrinth, I'll go ahead and keep it open if you want to hop in, but if not, I'll probably wrap it up. We never really talked too much about Mabon and and the autumn equinox, but I think it's one of those. Another time, perhaps once effect. Okay, no problem. No problem. Labyrinth, no problem. All right. Well, I think I'll end it here, and I guess that's about it. Thanks all for showing up. I'm gonna have another hangout. I don't know. I'm definitely gonna have another hangout on Saturday. Probably around the same time as the one on Wednesday. Probably like 7 p.m. I was hoping to put a video out tomorrow, but I'm not going to be able to do that. It's probably going to be like on Monday. So yeah, thank you all for showing up. I really appreciate it. I really like having an audience that enjoys watching my videos. So thank you all so much for watching my videos. Thank you so much for chatting and supporting me. And you know, it really means a lot to me to have you guys behind me, you know. So thank you all, especially all of you who are my Patreons. Animist has been one of my viewers since like day one, I think. And Jeremy and Labyrinth and all these names I recognize. Baked Jesus, and Tuesday Money. Tuesday's everywhere. She's stalking me. So all right, all. Thank you so much, and have a good night.